1 second. He's got to get it on YouTube real quick.
Got it.
All right, you're all live and good to go.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Pillar 4 Advisory Meeting. Today is Thursday, February 23rd, and our advisory group will be meeting with us this afternoon, going over our agenda. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ellie Mitchell, our co-chairperson for our committee. If we could also introduce the other members of our committee, please. Jaden, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dawn Martin here as well.
I saw that Kara's in the car, so she may not be able to come off and mute and introduce herself.
Okay, and Ellie, do you want to introduce?
Sure. I'm Ellie Mitchell. I'm the director of the Maryland Out of School Time Network, and we're also the support. We support the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I pulled over to introduce myself. Kara Burhan, Blueprint Coordinator in Washington County Public Schools.
Thank you, Kara. Ellie, do you want to go ahead and introduce the agenda for us today?
Sure. Actually, I need to pull it up. But I know that we're going to start with some updates from the AIB. We have quite a few of them. And then we have a guest today, Liz Zogby, who is going to talk with us a little bit about the formation of a special education work group, which is very exciting, and ways that perhaps we can get involved and support in that work. And then we want to get updates from the rest of the committee members about kind of what's happening around the state. We will also be getting tonight a list of legislative that will probably be part of the AIB updates, is a list of things that have come up in the legislature so far that could impact the blueprint and are kind of related to Pillar 4 work. We may or may not be able to fully discuss that tonight because people may have to dig into it a little bit. And then we will talk about our future meetings and next steps.
Perfect. I can start with some updates from the AIB, and I have this trepidation that a dog is about to go off. So if that happens, I'm going to pause real quickly. So we have about 3 updates, I think, since we last met in December. We are in the middle of organizing an outcomes work group. And if you followed the AIB meetings, the members of this work group were announced at our February 9th meeting, and a list of those members is available on our website. This group is charged with taking, hopefully everybody real quick got their beautiful copy of the blueprint in the mail, so that the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan, they're charged with digging into every outcome in here, and there are a lot, and tying the metrics to it. Like they need to figure out what are we aiming for, and to identify all of the data sources that are available, et cetera. So that group will be starting next week with their first kickoff meeting to set the purpose. Those meetings will all be live streamed, so anybody's welcome to watch those and to follow along. And when it comes time for them to dig into Pillar 4, they are going to be requesting support from the advisory committee to kind of take a look at it and lend your lens to their thoughts and to bring your perspective, because even within this committee, you bring a lot of different perspectives and can really help us polish these well. So we're really excited about that work, and that will then lend to, in August, by August 1st, we owe an update to the comprehensive plan. That will be the substantive change, that the addition will be the outcomes and the measures, the metrics that will be established. So we anticipate publishing like a supplemental edition, not a whole nother beautiful book like that. But that's kind of the end goal, is that this group should be working from next week through about July with an outcome, hopefully for every goal in there, ready by the end of summer, presuming that we're able to do that much work that fast. So that's the first piece. The second piece, we just wanted to give you a quick update. As you know, March 15th is coming fast, probably on this team. Kara knows it really well. The LEAs are working on their draft plans, and as are the state agencies and entities like the consortium and the CTE committee and MSDE and MHEC. So all of those are due by March 15th. They will all be posted on our website and also MSDE and or the LEAs. We are currently listing on our website, if you go to the implementation plan page and scroll down on the left-hand side to the LEA section, we have a list on there, and we have right now, if there's any public meetings that anybody would want to go to for each of those LEAs to hear them share with their stakeholders, we have that list. And then we are shortly adding any LEA that has posted draft documents to their website. That will be available for all of the LEAs on our website. Just keep in mind, they're not required to have those on their website. So we're just sharing it if they are posting it out there. And then next steps, those plans will be submitted, and then both MSDE and the AIB will be reviewing them and working to determine if they've incorporated and done everything that needed to be in that plan. And that decision will need to be made likely in June, so that and it's an evolving process. In the event that they need to make any changes or revisions, that can be done in that time. And then that, of course, is the determining factor for the release of some funds. So it's a pretty critical process that will be happening. And then the final thing is just like Ellie mentioned, there are a number of bills that have been introduced that pertain to both the blueprint broadly and then more specifically to Pillar 4. So Ellie and Chandra had asked if we could compile a list of some of those, and our wonderful Lisa Armstrong, who's working on our team to help us follow the legislation, was able to compile and send a list for you guys to be able to see the bills and to follow any that may be of interest to you. So Ellie, I don't actually have the list in front of me. I don't know if we want to go through any of them or maybe put it on the screen. Or send
I think maybe we should just I should have thought about this, emailing it to the committee in advance.
Okay.
And maybe when we get to the section of sharing out, if anybody has a particular bill that they've been following or want to talk about, we could talk about it then. And then if folks have questions, like I just posed questions about 2 of the bills that they would like to get answered through the AIB, perhaps they could flag that at that time as well.
Perfect.
And why don't I go ahead and try to send that around now, so if people can pull it up and eyeball it, that would probably be helpful if that makes sense.
Sure, that sounds great. And then if you're not familiar, you can pick certain bills and follow them on MyMGA. If you want to know updates and how that bill is progressing through the session. And then, of course, our team is happy to help if anybody has any questions on that or any of these specific bills. Does anybody have any other questions for me?
I do. I have 2. One is, I just wanted to flag, one isn't a question. One, I wanted to flag for everyone that there is an outcomes and measurement work group session on 2/28. And that's on the meetings tab of the AIB meetings page for those who might be interested in looking for that. And then the question I had for you would be about the LEA plans. Once they are posted, is the AIB accepting comments on the local plans from people, or is it going to be just internal discussion between AIB and MSDE?
That is a fabulous question that I don't have an answer to. Let me take that back and find out. I know that there will be an extensive review process between the 2 agencies, but they will be posted. I'll find out if there will be a public comment or an opportunity for feedback, and I'll let you know.
Great. And then I'm just going to real quick, since I just emailed you all, I should be able to grab your emails real quick. And forward you the fun and wonderful document that has all the bills. So you can start perusing those in case you want to ask any more questions. Oh, that did not work. Hold on. In the meantime, while I'm doing that, perhaps we should pass the floor over to Liz to introduce herself and to bring us news around the special education work group, what's been happening and kind of how that all arose, and maybe give a little background and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I'm Liz Ogby. I'm the co-chair of the Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. And I am co-chairing a policy committee of the Education Advocacy Coalition, which is the statewide special education advocacy group that's led by Leslie Margolis at DRM. And it's sort of in that capacity that I'm joining you today. So Buzzy and I are co-chairing this policy committee, and the sort of first thing on our agenda is this special education work group. So from our perspective, how it came about was we made comments on the draft comprehensive implementation plan. Special education, doesn't really appear all that much in the blueprint. There's funding, but there's really not anything substantive around what that funding is aimed to do in any specific way. It doesn't really set a vision for what special education reform could look like. And so when we produced sets of comments for that plan, we were really pleased in that December 1st meeting that the AIB at the final hour added this special education work group to the comprehensive plan. It's pillar 4, objective 3, tasks 2 and 3. And from our perspective, it's really an opportunity for transformational change in special education. Often reform efforts in special education are kind of tweaks around the side. We can fix this little part of the IEP process, or we're noticing this problem, let's try to address it. But the opportunity to gather stakeholders and to really examine kind of soup to nuts issues of teacher quality, funding, the balance of state and LEA regulatory control, expectations, instruction for all the many kinds of students that are part of the receiving special education services, family engagement. There's really it's very broad and deep, and it extends into general education in all kinds of ways. And so being able to really spend the time to do that review and come up with recommendations around what that additional funding is for and what we really need in order to, develop world-class education for all students feels really critical to us. And to do it in a way that is about thinking about the barriers that exist to the kinds of reforms that many people understand really need to happen for special education to be improved. So in terms of sort of telling you what's happening, unfortunately, I can't really tell you what's happening because when we heard about the special education work group, we reached out to MSDE and the AIB to let them know that we define the scope and membership of what the work group would look like. We understand that it's going to be modeled somewhat after the ELL work group, but the ELL work group was statutory. So, it was really defined what that was going to be. This is pretty vague. So we don't really know what it's going to look like. And I was particularly interested to hear that last question about whether there'll be an opportunity for public input once the plans get submitted, because we haven't been invited in to be part of thinking about the scope and the membership as the plan is being developed as a community of advocates. And that was really what our hope was, to provide that input up front. We certainly have thoughts about what what the membership should be. You know, we really want to make sure that there are representatives from the General Assembly, like there were on the ELL work group, which I think was really important. But also because special education is in some ways more complicated than the ELL work group was, in that it serves, you know, students with low incidence disabilities, high incidence disabilities, you know, kids all, you know, obviously from birth to 21. And when you think about the pillars, you know, special education actually is distributed really across all of those pillars and more. So, you know, we are really hoping that it's going to follow that ELL model, that they'll be transparent in terms of the transparency that was there, that the meetings will be open, that there'll be opportunities for public input and collaboration. But like I said, we don't really know what that plan is going to look like yet. And I guess, you know, we would love to, you know, work with you to make sure that that input happens. You know, ideally, perhaps before March 15th, but if not before, then certainly after. So that's kind of what I know so far. I don't know.
Liz, is there something that we can do as an advisory board in terms of supporting the work of your groups that, you know, is there somebody you want us to, maybe we could reinforce a letter or, something that we could do to help move this from theoretical to action oriented?
Right. Well, I mean, certainly any sort of communication to MSCE as they build their initial plan. You know, we would love to meet with a representative. We'd, you know, to be able to find out kind of what they're thinking. You know, once the plan is submitted, of course, it's a lot harder to, if they're thinking about it in a very different way than we're thinking about it, I think it's going to be really hard to sort of fundamentally shift that scope and membership. If it's little tweaks, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But I think, you know, any assistance that you all could provide in helping us to sort of build that bridge so that we could be invited in to collaborate, that would be great. We did write a memo about, let's see, about 5 or 6 weeks ago that kind of laid out what we thought that the membership and the scope should look like, but haven't heard back.
I think you shared that with me, and I haven't forwarded that to the full advisory board yet, but I will.
Okay.
And Kara, I think you're our resident or one of our resident experts. I just wondered if you have any questions or comments for Liz.
Hi, Liz.
Hi.
I don't have questions or comments. I am, my certification is K through adult special ed. So that is kind of my home wheelhouse. So I thank you. And I look forward to, oh, sorry about the wind chimes, hearing what happens moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, we're excited to dig in. There's so many interesting areas of exploration that we could do. And, you know, there haven't been a lot of states that have really taken on real, you know, that kind of soup to nuts kind of review of their special education systems and thought about it in a brand new way. And there's a lot of opportunity to do that, to think about, you know, what is evidence-based instruction for all of these different groups of kids. How does it intersect with how we're doing teacher preparation? What kind of professional development we're providing? You know, thinking about special education service delivery models that work and are sustainable, and how we distribute funding. And that's obviously your focus. You know, we want to make sure that when we provide funding, we're doing it in a way that is going to produce the kinds of outcomes, not just in terms of academic achievement in the moment, but really tying it to what the end goal is for kids, which is, you know, kids are in school. Many kids, you know, in my community, in the Down syndrome community, will be in school until they're 21. But they have a whole lifetime to lead after that, right? And we've moved now so that Maryland is an employment first state. We want kids to grow up to be part of competitive integrated employment. And to prepare kids to do that, we need to use the evidence-based practices that are going to be tied to those kinds of outcomes. And so that's, I think, you know, taking the moment and the breath to bring together the group of people that can really do that kind of in-depth exploration to bring us out on the other end with really strong, robust recommendations about the kinds of changes and what the vision is for what special education could be feels really important.
Liz, I just want to say I so appreciated just your connection to teacher preparation and thinking about those evidence-based instructional practices. We know I'm the director of special ed teacher preparation at University of Maryland. And so, it's very at the forefront of our work is like preparing the best educators possible, knowing that as they go in that first year, they are going to be inundated with case management and being a new teacher, navigating all of those aspects. But I think so much of this, when I look at Pillar 4 and at the special education overview, it's that idea of selecting appropriate instructional strategies. So broad, like making sure that we have folks who can dig into that and really say, what are ways that we can evaluate that, knowing that we have students with such a spectrum of needs. We know one evidence-based practice does not fit all. And so are we picking the right practices? Are we implementing them with fidelity? I just think there are so many levels that I hope the work group is able to touch on to really say, how do we evaluate this from a quality standpoint that then connects to not just teacher preparation, but like that ongoing coaching and support in our school districts too. So, yeah.
And I think another piece that we've really identified is, there are so many barriers between general educators and special educators, from school buildings up to district, all the way up to MSDE, and that division really prevents a lot of the progress, because in some ways we actually know that the way to drive higher achievement in kids who get special education services is for them to have great general education teachers, and for those general education teachers to be implementing, UDL and great practice within their classrooms, and then couple that with specially designed instruction that really works for them. So it's very broad and deep, and those tentacles go out in so many directions, and it's a lot to explore, but it does feel like an opportunity. So we're really excited about it, and we hope that it can be a great collaborative process. There's so many stakeholders, so bringing them together is a lot.
I think Rachel was going to be able to share a little bit of a timeline.
Yes, I'm going to pull up one of the Excel timeline that shows Pillar 4, when things are happening. I just want to make sure I've got the right thing here. Do you see a bluish document? Okay, great. So you've seen the plan. These were our original documents. They were updated with timelines, like when the work group was put into the plan after the first release. This document was updated. So you can see here that establishing it falls within the fiscal year 23. So this year, the group needs to be established. And in the plan, it does identify that the AIB and MSDE will jointly identify the members. So I'll get you more information as soon as we have that, but to my knowledge, we're not there yet. And then broadly, the work is to happen by next year. So you can look at all of these things. It's due by the end of fiscal year 24 that the plan is to be submitted to the General Assembly and everyone. So there's a couple of subtasks in here that were mentioned, but again, they're all within these 2 school years, the current school year and next. So I have made a note, and we'll get some more information on that as well.
Great.
Time's a ticking.
Indeed.
Are there any other questions for Liz or comments from the work group members?
Liz, I just want to thank you for sharing the information and the process that you all are going through. And you're seeing the connection even with the EL work group. That's more of my realm that I'm used to working within, is the EL issues and challenges. So you're talking about things that very much tie in as well. And there's a whole lot of parallelism between the two. So I thank you for your input and your ideas and what you see as moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. I think we are moving then to updates from Pillar, and unless Liz, you have anything?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And be in touch, and we'll be in touch with you.
And I will send around the memo that Liz mentioned earlier, so that everybody has that to read. And perhaps before we end this meeting, we can discuss anything we may want to do to reinforce the memo and just follow up on it. So
Great. I will tune in on YouTube to the rest of your meeting. Thanks.
I think the next piece was for us to get kind of updates from you all, kind of from your perspective on the ground, what's happening. And also, this is a good chance for people to raise any concerns or excitement or whatever from the what's happening in the legislative session, either from the bills that were flagged on the list that I just emailed around, or if there are bills that are, you know, already kind of burning holes in your brain that you want to flag for us or ask questions about. As you know, sometimes you read a bill and you're like, what is this bill actually about? Like, why does this bill exist? What is it for? I've had some head scratchers for sure this session. So I don't know if we just want to do a little round robin and hear from people and hear what, again, it doesn't have to be session related, but it could be, and kind of other things that are pressing or that you've heard or that have come up. And I'll go last because I have a few, but I don't want to over suck time.
I can share a little bit of what's going on in the LEA that I work within, which is Harford County. Currently, we have our draft implementation plan up on our website, and we're seeking public input and comment on what we have so far in our plan for submission. Trying to get some perspective on different things and answering questions that are coming up. So that's been up for about almost a week now. So we're working towards that. I know that some of the bills that I'm most interested in have to do with the dual language immersion programs and funding for such, because we're in the process of building a dual language immersion program in our county. It's not something that we've had before. And I'm curious, and the question keeps coming up is there going to be a definition for how we look at a teacher to be bilingual? What's the standard? Is there a standard? And how will they be gaining their certification? And I know that's part of it with House Bill 56, but at the same time, really recognizing that within our blueprint plan as well, because in several aspects of the blueprint plan, it notes that there will be bilingual staff, and but we have no way right now and currently of determining what bilingual really means and if there's going to be a standard set. So that's an ongoing question that we have with regard to things in my realm.
I added it to my list, Chandra.
Thank you, Rachel.
You bet.
Do any of our members have any updates of things going on in your areas or communities with regard to?
I have a little bit. So I'm in Anne Arundel County. So I think our school system, I'm a student still, unfortunately, but fortunately. I think our school system did a really good job about engaging students, not just community members, but really we focused on students. So our blueprint coordinator and pillar chairs visited like our superintendent's advisory council, our student equity teams, and held about 6 or 7 different workshops, garnering input from each pillar and the plan as a whole. So that's about all of an update for me.
Don Martin, I think the major piece in conversation that's definitely ongoing in my realm for teacher education, special education, is just recruitment, really. And so much of that connects to the work that we want to do in this particular pillar, particularly around having instructors who can like implement sound programs for students with disabilities. I think in addition to the retention, that like the recruitment side, we're also seeing, because there is a shortage of teachers, a lot of the coaches who might be supporting our new teachers in the school systems have been pulled back into some of those instructional lead roles. So like that support and coaching in those induction years isn't happening in the same ways that it maybe has happened in the past. So those are definitely just 2 ongoing conversations that we have around both recruiting teachers, certifying teachers in special education, dual certifying teachers, our general educators, getting them that special ed certification as well, so that they're really well-rounded. But then, of course, for those who are on the special education side as case managers, retaining them in the field.
So I can provide an update from Washington County, similar to what Chandra was sharing. Our draft blueprint is available on our website. It was the draft as of last Wednesday evening. It has changed. It is changing currently, so we'll be putting another update probably next week. We've been having information sessions for all stakeholders. Those started last week. We have 2 more scheduled for next week, as well as we've been invited to community organizations. For example, tomorrow we're speaking at the Greater Hagerstown Committee meeting, just trying to get as many opportunities as possible to go and speak about the blueprint and what the charges are in the blueprint, what we're currently doing in Washington County, and our plans to move forward. Certainly in terms of Pillar 4, when we look at special ed, EL, and our other groups, how are we best addressing their needs and refining our processes? And I think that's it. Sorry about the wind chime. I thought I moved away from it, but it's still making noise in the background.
Never apologize for wind chimes. I think that's a pretty pleasant sound compared to, say, my donkey sounding beagle, or, you know, I'm down with the wind chimes.
Thank you for your grace, Ellie.
Speaking of donkey sounding beagles, I just heard mine. So I'll share a few things. I just sent around an email. I was with Baltimore County Community School coordinators today, doing a training on how to engage with your elected officials, which was fun. And they had lots and lots of things to say about how things are going in Baltimore County. But one in particular was from a community school coordinator at an alternative school, saying that, you know, the typical community school model doesn't quite fit for the alternative school world. So I thought that might be something we could delve into at some future date. I'm going to do some research around the state to see how that's impacting other alternative schools. I don't know how many alternative schools are on the concentration of poverty grant list. So that's a question I might throw back to Rachel. If you can help me with that research, that would be great. But certainly I could see how there might be the need for maybe some additional conversations about implementation of community schools in that different setting. we've been following a couple of the bills. Really, the only bill that specifically mentions community schools, there's several that mention concentration of poverty, but are more sort of focused on eligibility and phase-in and stuff, is the bill that is being heard tomorrow in the Senate. It's Senate Bill 814, and I understand that it's actually going to come with several amendments that it basically creates kind of a new program to make community schools that have been historically low performing into promise schools with additional supports. We did not take either an oppose or a support stance with it. We just did a letter of information. Our main concern is that community schools in general be implemented across the state and in local districts with fidelity to the model of community schools, and that we'd like to see more systems of support both at the state and local level for that implementation. So, there could be some concerns about concentrating resources into 10 schools at a time. And there are some other provisions within the blueprint that address, historically low performing schools. So we just did a letter of information. I'm happy to share that. We're going to have everything that we're responding to on our website. We have a legislative page. I haven't updated the last couple that I'll have to do that over the weekend. They come so fast and furious. Getting them reposted is fun. And then I before we went live, I asked Rachel for some clarity on a couple of the bills that deal with kind of the eligibility and phase-in adjustments, because I've read the bills, but I don't entirely 100% understand how they might impact implementation, whether it speeds things up or whether it would impact the number of schools that end up being eligible for certain things. Many of you may know that this year's budget was hugely impacted by adding Medicaid into the conversation about how many kids are counted as living in poverty, and it increased the overall count of kids living in poverty in the state by almost 100,000 students, with a budgetary implication of more than $300 million that was not anticipated in this year. And so I know that several of these bills might have sought to speed things up, but because we still have a deficit in the actually overall funding for the blueprint, and even the $500 million that was added by the governor this year kind of only offset some of those unexpected increases. I think, there's still work to do on the funding side. And I know there were just budget hearings in the last couple of days, but I wasn't able to entirely watch all of them. But Rachel, I don't know if there's any other. I know that there was an updated January version of the Neighborhood Indicators of Poverty report, which I have not had a chance to read yet, but I know it's on the AIB website in the reports submitted to AIB section.
It was December.
It's December. There's a January one too, isn't there?
Let me pull that up. I also just dropped a link to the Washington Post article that talks about what Ellie was just mentioning about the way that it was 100,000 more students were identified. So if anybody wanted to know more about that.
And so in talking to Bill Ferguson about his bill, which I think the way I read it would have sped up the phase-in of the concentration of poverty. It was written before 100,000 more students were eligible for the grant. So some of these may be changing as this budget impact is happening. So trying to watch it and keep up with everything is always fun. But yes, thank you, Rachel, for dropping that article and
Yes, and then the January, I know what you're talking about now. It was actually documentation that was required to be submitted by any LEA that has more than 40 or more concentration of poverty schools. So there, this year are 2 LEAs, Baltimore City and Prince George's County. All of their documentation from the past 3 years was updated. So that's the documentation that is added and listed for January. It's a lot if you're going to dig through it, but we did try to organize it by year so that you can see kind of what's happening, what they're doing with those grants that are being provided to the community schools.
yeah, I thank you for flagging that because I really do need to dig into that. And there'll be a few more counties this year that will come on that have more than 40 schools. So Baltimore County being one as of next year, and Montgomery County, I think, might be the other.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to watch how that changes their work and then also to be able to get more documentation from those districts. That's it for me.
I think I can add, it looks like, and I'm going to check on this. It looks like the other document, the neighborhood indicators of poverty that was added in January might be the Spanish translation.
Ah, okay. Because I did see one that was January 2023, but maybe you're right. Maybe that's just the Spanish.
Now I'm a little confused because the covers in there's one in Spanish is what we've got here. I'm not sure. I will figure this out. I did not recall a new one coming in, but I will check.
There's so many. I don't know how everybody actually keeps track. The only other thing I think we should flag is the application to actually join the AIB still open.
It is until tomorrow.
So there you go.
Tomorrow night, we have a member vacancy as Fagan Harris was appointed as the chief of staff for the governor's office. And so the Department of Legislative Services has reopened the AIB nominating committee, and anybody that is interested is welcome to apply. There's a link on our website, but we don't actually own the process. But if you go to our homepage in red at the top, there's a link to access the DLS info sheet and information on how to apply for anyone interested.
So if you know, because Fagan was our man.
He was our Pillar 4 guy.
If you know anybody who would be a great replacement who can do this with us, get them to apply.
I think that was feedback from everybody though, Ellie.
What was that?
I think we just concluded feedback from everybody.
Oh,
with
yes,
all of the
that's
different
it. Yep.
LEAs. Next on the agenda?
I think we are down to conclusions and next steps. Like I said, I will send around the memo that the special ed folks had sent about the special ed work group. And I think it would be great if, as Pillar 4 advisory group, we could do something to maybe send a note to the AIB and MSDE, just kind of reinforcing, once you've read the memo, if you feel simpatico, just kind of reinforcing their recommendations around the composition and approach of the work group.
Can you review for us when our next meeting is and how we have scheduled them until, I believe, June?
We are the 4th Thursday of every month at 4:30. And that is now, it should be calendar invites from Rachel on your calendars for that, I believe. And then we figured we would revisit what summer would look like, how frequently, et cetera, we would want to meet when we hit June.
I think a lot of that's going to have to do with what we're tasked to do for the metrics and outcomes link as well.
I will mention that we had originally hoped that we would get an update from the Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports. Is that exactly what it's called? I'm always troubled with saying that group correctly. And they were not able to join us tonight. We have sent them an invitation to attend the March meeting. But we will also be able to have seen and kind of looked at all the local implementation plans when that March meeting comes. So there may be something we want to address around that as well. And or if there are other topics that you guys want us to, or people that you want us to invite or clarification you're looking for, just let us know, because we're happy to include those on the agenda.
Is there anything that anyone would like to share at this time, or have any specific questions that you would like us to get some answers for our next meeting?
I could take this opportunity to commend you for an excellent list already, but I'm happy to take more if there's any other things that you have questions on. I really appreciate it. I think that this meeting shows the importance of the advisory committees as well. Like, we're starting to see that in all of our advisory committees, that we're digging in and you're helping us push the work forward. So there is a lot to get done, but these are really important topics. And so I appreciate those questions. If there's anything else that's in your wheelhouse or that you're thinking about, I'm happy to take it back and to get more information and to bring it back to you.
That concludes our agenda, correct, Ellie?
That concludes our agenda.
With that being said, if there's no other comments or questions or concerns or anything you'd like to share, we'd like to conclude our meeting at this time, 5:21. And we look forward to seeing you all in March, the last Thursday at 4:30. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.